Hello and welcome to the first Broker Pulse members only podcast. I'm Michael Johnson, and with me today, our co-host, Annie Kane from the Advisor and Mortgage Business. Hi, Annie. How are you going?
Hi. Good. How are you going?
Good. I'm excited. This is our first podcast for the Broker Pulse. Long time coming. We've been talking about this for a few months right now.
Yeah, we've been super excited to try and do it, and finally able to sit down together and record this. So hopefully you guys find it useful.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, this will be a monthly podcast that we put out talking about all the latest Broker Pulse results that we see come through. Annie and I will talk through the latest storylines. We'll look to see what lenders are improving, what lenders are falling away, and really just look to unpack basically what brokers are saying and what that means to the industry. So I guess, Annie, let's look at, the core reason behind Broker Pulse is to help brokers and lenders sort of really bring to light the challenges that each party is sort of facing at the moment. So maybe you could talk to a bit of the challenges brokers are facing with understanding turnaround times and understanding, these different areas of lender performance.
Yeah, sure. And I think this is really it's so timely given the fact that we've been running Broker Pulse for years now. And I'll probably get back to you, MJ, around the actual beginnings of Broker Pulse, because it's really, really interesting. But I think at the moment, especially, it's so useful because of the fact that, as we know, we're hearing so much around the channel conflict in turnaround times. So the fact that the lenders, especially the larger lenders, are seeing broker introduced loans approving and, anything from 9 days plus, but 9 days, I think, is generous, really. I mean, Some of them seeing a month, 2 months even to approve a broker loan, whereas they admittedly are saying that in direct channel, it's only 1 or 2 days, maybe 3 or 4 at most. So, you might have seen, Michael, recently we did some coverage from the House of Representatives Standing Economics Committee, and they asked all 4 CEOs of major banks what were happening with turnaround times. And actually they quoted the Broker Pulse survey, which is so cool. So they were asked, look, according to Broker Pulse, your turnaround times are around 20 days for broker channel. That was in the February Broker Pulse, I think. What are you doing about it? And all 4 of the major banks said, we acknowledge that they are taking longer to go through broker channel, and really didn't have a lot of reasoning as to why that was. Some suggested it was to do with broker lodgements being a lot higher than anticipated. Others were suggesting it was to do with the quality of data they were receiving. But generally, there seemed to be consensus that yes, it is taking a lot longer to approve a loan through the third-party channel than it is direct. And so really Broker Pulse is showing that brokers are, giving us their responses, or giving Momentum Intelligence their responses to what is happening on turnaround times and what they think about the lenders they're using for that month. So probably, and Michael, this is a good point to actually talk about why you started Broker Pulse in the first place. And this is something that we started, 2019?
Yeah, September 2019. So I think it's been around, we're sort of 18 months on, 20 months on from there now.
Yeah.
I guess, and what you've just raised is the power that brokers have in terms of raising their voices. And I guess, you and I have had a lot of conversations around, how do we get the voices of brokers to the people that are going to make the decisions around how, how lenders operate and things like that. And Momentum Intelligence, as a research house, we have a couple of different ways we do that. But Broker Pulse is really, to be honest, it's grown well beyond just a piece of research. It's a really community-driven sort of voice that brokers can use to get, what they're experiencing on a day-to-day basis gets in the hands of the leaders across these large institutions, so they can make better decisions. Because at the end of the day, these people working in these large lenders, they just ultimately want brokers to, come and work with them so they can get the best outcomes for their clients, obviously. So I guess for Broker Pulse, how it came about was, we were looking at our annual third-party lending report, and that's it's quite a large, long survey. If there's any brokers out there that have done it, you would know, it's quite significant. But we do it once a year. There's 17 different attributes across every part of the lender service sort of sphere, and we thought, well, how can we really look at that but in a more real-time scale? So this monthly survey that we have created, and we should highlight, Annie, that this podcast is only going out to those brokers and those people that are part of this community. So these people that are contributing to this, you guys are getting these results back. So essentially, this monthly survey was built as a way for us to understand, which lenders are performing better and which ones are maybe dropping away throughout the year, not just at a snapshot. So I think, looking at the reporting across the advisor and across mortgage business, we're seeing that data is coming in handy to sort of talk to some of the broader issues that are in the market at the moment.
Yeah, and I think this is really key. So what we do on the advisor and mortgage business is really not only champion the broker channel, but also just talk about what's happening in mortgage distribution more generally. So the advisor, obviously very broker focused, and mortgage business more around mortgage distribution. And for both, really invaluable information to have all of you guys talking about the experiences you're seeing with lenders, because we get told a lot of the time one thing from lenders, and even as during the House of Representatives committees, people were saying, well, they're saying that it's taking slightly longer in the broker channel, but we know it's weeks longer. And brokers will know from all the communications they get from their lenders, from their aggregators around turnarounds, even from the communications they have with other brokers in social channels or just anecdotally, that there's, everyone knows that this is taking a long time, but there isn't a huge amount of quantitative research. So I think this is what makes this so interesting and so useful, is to be like, we hear you, we want to understand this information, we want to collate it and put it together in a report so that not only lenders can see where they're tracking and where they're sitting against their competitors, but also so that we can push it out more publicly and say, this is what is happening and let's try and do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, from the broker standpoint, there's a lot of value there. And as a part of our evolution of Broker Pulse, we lined up, had about 15 separate conversations, 30-minute sort of Zoom calls with different brokers late last year. I sort of touched on, obviously you're one of the most active brokers. How can we work with you to really get the most out of what we're doing? And for the broker standpoint, a lot of the feedback was, well, we can't get this information anywhere else. We maybe use a set of lenders that are generally in our minds, okay, for this scenario, I'm going to go to this lender. But let's take, for example, Adelaide Bank, a lender that maybe hasn't been in many brokers' sort of line of sight, but for whatever reason, their results have improved or whatever. And then maybe these brokers who use the Broker Pulse now have visibility to see that and are able to sort of to see those changes and act on it, right?
Yeah, and it can be a blessing and a curse, I imagine, because suddenly Adelaide Bank were getting all these new loans from Broker Pulse members being like, oh, cool, I'll use them. And suddenly their turnaround times will blow out. So it is actually, really, really useful for everyone to see, but don't go too gangbusters, because you don't want to kind of have a double-edged sword of suddenly putting all your loans to one lender and then realizing that actually it's backlogging. So I think there is real value in the information. And I think the whole point really is to enable the Broker Pulse community to understand what is happening at a macro level, what your peers are seeing, and actually being able to track that long term so that you can see, well, what happened 4 months ago, what happened 5 months ago, how has that appeared over the longevity? Are they consistent in their turnarounds? Is their staff consistent in their credit assessment? And actually being able to communicate with your peers within Broker Pulse as well. You mentioned TPLR as well, and I think, that's third-party lending report, and I think that is actually really key, because third-party lending report is a report that we started with Momentum Intelligence and the advisor years ago, like what, I don't know, 8-9 years ago.
Well, I think it's actually 11 or 12 years. I think it was.
Is it? Wow.
Yeah, 2011, 2010, we started that.
And that at the time was, again, one of those things where I wasn't actually at the advisor at the time, but I looked back at the research and being like, how useful this was to see what's happening year on year and what brokers think of the different lenders in the different attributes as well. So who's doing particularly well in particular segments and who isn't, and tracking how they go over time. But as you say, because the turnaround times are changing so quickly, Broker Pulse is so useful to have it on a monthly basis, to have that more in sort of contemporary snapshot of what is happening and to be able to talk to your fellow peers about it.
Yeah, and I think what we've seen, Annie, is that what we've been able to do with any of these sort of things, that like any sort of research pieces that we're working on, but particularly for Broker Pulse, is the way I've sort of explained it is you've got lenders on one side and then you've got brokers on the other, but there's a glass window in between. So they can see each other, but they're trying to sort of speak and communicate and yell at each other saying, we need this, we need this. But what we've trying to do here is open that window up so these communications can actually take place. Because at the moment we're sort of just screaming at a window and, we're not being
miming.
heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So how can we sort of open that up and have those conversations? That's really what the Broker Pulse is about, and that's what this podcast will be about as well. How do we start to have, how do we not only interpret this really quantitative result level experiences we're getting from brokers? In the future, we'll look to have some brokers on. We'll speak to some of the Broker Pulse members and hear what they have to say. Here's what's happening, and really start to build out this community of brokers who can, have a voice and sort of shape the industry.
And I think this is really key as well, because so many brokers and lenders will have one-on-one conversations with their BDMs. And a lot of the time, a broker and a BDM will know inside out, like what is happening and how their relationship is. But it's actually when you come en masse that it really makes a difference, because one broker's experience in isolation could be an anomaly. But when you actually see 100 brokers or 200 brokers finding the same thing, that's when the really interesting behavioral stuff comes through, and you can start identifying patterns, which obviously momentum intelligence is what you'll love to do, have a look at all the analysis and the research. But I think from a Broker Pulse perspective, we really want to understand what it is that brokers are facing and what challenges they're seeing. So also do make sure that if you want to, we use the Broker Pulse results for commentary in the advisor and for mortgage business. And we sometimes use the comments as well. So if you do actually have something else that you think we should be looking at, do feel free to leave them in the comments and let us know, because the advisor and mortgage business is here to really help try and address these issues where there are issues. And if there's something that you want us to look into, let us know.
So I guess this is a great avenue, but I guess let's talk about how people get involved. Let's touch on briefly the mechanics of what the Broker Pulse is and how people get involved. I imagine if you've already found us on this podcast, you've at least done the Broker Pulse survey once, and you maybe would have received some results. And this is an evolving thing. So if you do have any feedback, more broadly beyond industry issues, if there's just some data that you'd like to see, send me an email. Everyone has my email. If you do the Broker Pulse, you get emails from me saying, hey, come and get involved.
What is your email, Michael?
michael.johnson@momentumintelligence.com.au. Or for a really easy one, hello@brokerpulse.com.au. That's a little bit easier and shorter. Just shoot me an email and say, hey, I want to know this. And I will come back to you personally and we'll deliver those results to you. No problem at all. So I guess more broadly with the Broker Pulse, the mechanics of it are, we do the survey every single month. We launch it on the first business day of that new month. So let's say Monday, the 1st of April. So we would actually launch it on that day. And then we have 7 days to collect that data before we close it for the period. So what we're trying to do is to get all the brokers to come along and actually take the survey within those 7 days, reporting on the previous period. So we're talking about March, for example. Mm-hmm. So we're saying for the month of March, which lenders did you use? How was your experience with them? How were the BDMs? How were the credit assessors? And what were the turnaround times like? With a few other questions in there as well. And the whole purpose of that is to collect a standard set of data every single month from a couple hundred brokers. And that way we can report on these results at high level sample sizes so we can really tell these stories. And on top of that, more broadly, there's the opportunity for us to really start to tackle these industry issues and get your voices on things as well. And that's why at the end of some of our Broker Pulse surveys, we'll also have a handful more where we sort of touch on some of the latest issues. We're looking at the moment, Annie, with valuations and different things like that. So it's leveraging, the voices of brokers throughout the Broker Pulse on a monthly basis and stacking that data and telling a story, as well as sort of amplifying some of the key issues by understanding what brokers are saying. So, the advisor and mortgage business can learn and sort of put that out there so they can ask questions to lenders, but just more broadly as well, the lenders that subscribe to this and the brokers that subscribe to this can see exactly what's happening. So yeah, it's a really powerful mechanism. So basically, once we've collected all that data, it takes us about 24 hours to get all that out. And then you receive a PDF with all these results. So then from there, Annie, you and I sit down and we work through, and then every month we'll record this podcast and we'll talk through what's happening.
Yeah, which I'm really looking forward to, because while I do obviously read the report and have a look at the dashboard when the results come out, it's always really interesting to actually, I think, talk through them with someone. And similarly, I know that people who conduct and take part in the Broker Pulse find it really useful to talk to their sort of peers on it as well, around what they're actually seeing and talking about the trends, because now that we actually have 18 months worth of information, we can actually see how things are changing, not only year on year, but over season to season too. So really, really interesting to have that information at our fingertips. And thank you all so much for taking part in Broker Pulse and actually being part of this community and sharing the thoughts that you have on the lenders, because it's so valuable. And I think we're just trying to really get it out there and make sure that your voices are heard.
Well, Annie, thank you for joining me for our first Broker Pulse podcast. We'll do this every single month. It's going to be great. And thank you all for tuning in. We really appreciate it. We look forward to sharing these insights with you every single month. And we'll probably do a few read-alongs and things like that, Annie. We'll go through the report and we'll really dive deep in some of the data. So stay tuned for our next episode. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. If you would like to get involved with the Broker Pulse, you can go to brokerpulse.com.au or follow us on the socials. We look forward to sharing these insights with you next month. Thank you.